Episode 211, A Way Out. Fex, Aaron, Logan, and Peter were currently inside Logan's room. The conversation between all of them was silent. They didn't realize it until now, but the thing that brought most of them together was Quinn. The others didn't know each other well, if not for Quinn. The only sound that could be heard was Logan typing away on his computer, trying to gain access and find a way to upload the video they had made without any traces. Fex, on the other hand, was keeping a close eye on Peter. Without Quinn there, Fex felt like it was his duty to protect all of them. If he went out of control, though Logan would be able to deal with him on his own. He knew firsthand how strong his shots from his trained suit were. While looking deeply at Peter, Fex was trying to figure out just who Quinn was. Right now, he had two main theories. One of them was that he was a member of one of the 13 families raised here on Earth since birth, and reported back to the main families once in a while. While down here, he had made the mistake of turning Peter, and was now trying to keep it a secret. But the thing that threw him off with this theory was his ability, the shadow ability. His first thought was that one of the families was keeping it a secret. When the crowning was to happen again, it would give them quite the power advantage. The other theory was Quinn didn't belong to any of the 13 vampire families, and instead belonged to them, the original shadow users. However, this theory of his was the most outlandish, since they were meant to be long dead. If the Vampire Council found out they hadn't all died, then there would be chaos. Walking down the hallway, both Quinn and Vorden were making their way to the weapons class. Even on off days like today, Leo would often rest there, or practice his swordsmanship. It was hard to say that Leo was a workaholic, because he wasn't doing it for work reasons. But there were times when Quinn and others around him could see that Leo was obsessed with the blade, but even that wasn't quite right either. Leo was just obsessed with getting revenge against the Dalki. While walking around, they could see the panic in the soldiers' faces. The students, who were outside the campus and around the city, had been asked to come back and remain inside the school. There was strict border control being held just around the school, with the soldiers surrounding the whole place in a circle. Even on their way to the martial arts hall, Quinn and Vorden were both questioned several times. The two of them now stood just outside the weapons hall, and Vorden hesitated before stepping in. "Quinn, this is the last chance, are you sure? What do we do if he doesn't agree? I don't think we're strong enough to fight him." "Even if he doesn't agree, he's not the type to turn us in for protecting a friend. He'll understand, trust me." With that, Quinn stepped forward, full of confidence, opening the door into the martial arts hall. It was the weekend, so no students were inside, but Leo was there, standing in the middle of the room. Sweat was dripping down from his forehead, while his sword was still sheathed by his side. Even before the two of them entered the room, he was already looking in their direction. "The two of you were standing outside for a while. I was wondering when you were going to come in," Leo said. "Is this guy blind?" Vorden asked. There weren't many opportunities where both Vorden and Leo were able to be around each other. Vorden knew about the accomplishments he had made during the war, but sometimes the rumors would often be exaggerated. "I wonder if I could touch him," Vorden thought. As the two of them got closer, Leo could tell that the energy inside the two of them was disturbed. But while looking at Vorden, it seemed strange. Had he met this person before? Because right now, he was looking at a person who had two different flows of energy inside him. This was because Vorden currently held the fire ability, as well as the invisibility ability. "Leo, I know you have already done me a huge favor by keeping my secret," Quinn spoke. "And because of this, I have decided to trust you with something else. I hope my hunch isn't wrong, and I hope you can help me." "I can't make any promises as I do not know what you wish to tell me," Leo said. "But as long as you are not in the wrong, you have nothing to worry about." When Leo spoke those last words, it gave Vorden a little shiver down his spine. Just what had this man gone through to be able to create such an intense feeling with only a few words? Was it his ability, or was it just the pressure emitting from this person? Quinn started to explain what had happened, and how they had come to learn what True Dream's reason for coming to the academy was, as well as how Pure was the one who had informed them, and how their friends had been chosen for the process. All they wanted to do was protect Aaron and Peter. Quinn, however, did leave out the detail of them trying to save Peter for a different reason related to himself, and just explained that he didn't want his friends to lose their ability. He also mentioned how they needed to send Aaron out of here right now, After they had finished explaining, both Quinn and Vorden took a deep breath, trying to calm themselves down. They carefully watched where Leo's hands were placed, thinking that any second now, he would go for his blade and capture the jewel. "You two can calm down," Leo said. "As I've said to both of you before, as long as you are not in the wrong, I shall help. And in this situation, I believe you are not in the wrong." While Quinn spoke about everything that had happened to True Dream, Leo made sure to carefully keep an eye on their energy flow, as well as their heartbeat. He noticed quite often when people were lying, their flow of energy, as well as their heartbeat, would alter slightly. Over the years, it came to the point where Leo was just as good as any lie detector. Of course, some had a solid will, and had been trained to the point where it wouldn't affect them. But for kids like these, it was easy for him to tell. He knew that the words Quinn spoke were the truth. "So, can you help us?" Quinn asked with a little smile on his face. "There isn't much I can do with the situation with Jack. Although he's not part of the military, he is treated a lot higher than I. When I arrived here, I was adamant to be put under Nathan, since I had an odd feeling about Duke. Right now, because of my rank, there isn't much I can do. Jack holds a special relationship with our head general Paul. The only thing I can do is wait to meet with the head general of Military Base 1. Not everyone in the military agrees with Jack's doing, and this will hopefully be a step in the right direction." What Leo was doing right now was a risk most people would never take. If someone were to find out that they were trying to ruin the relationship between Jack and the military, there would be many people on both sides upset with this, and most likely would go after Leo's life. What he was doing right now was fearless, and Leo didn't have a group or other people backing him, but only himself. "Don't worry about that," Quinn said. "Right now all we need to do is save our friend. Is there any way you can get us inside the teleport room to send her off somewhere?" Leo started to think, which wasn't a good sign. It seemed like he asked a simple yes or no answer, but that didn't seem to be the case. "As you know, the portal room has been heavily guarded ever since what happened between you two. Most likely it will be guarded even more. Still, there is a way. Follow me." Episode 212, Ranks of Pure. While entering her room, Layla was more nervous than ever. It reminded her of the time when she first joined the school. She was reminiscing about all the strange feelings, and they made her feel sick. "I think by the end of the day, I'm going to come out around 5 pounds lighter," she mockingly said to herself, desperately trying to forget about the ordeal she was in. There was no one inside when she entered her room. Her roommates were Aaron and another female student. Most of the time, their other roommates seemed to be out, which was a good thing for Layla. Still, just to be safe, she kept an eye on the door as she went about doing what she needed to be done. She had no clue how Logan caught her, despite her being so conscious. This made her second-guess her actions. All those years of training were hammered into her, so she wouldn't be caught during an investigation, and in the end she was caught by another student. Maybe she just wasn't made for work like this. The black orb resting under her bed was now in her hand, and once again, she took a deep breath, readying herself before tapping the top of the sphere. The blue ring on the top started to pulse in and out, until eventually turned into a solid blue color, signaling that it had been connected. "Agent 45 connected with Agent 83. Today isn't a report day. Does there seem to be a problem?" the voice from the sphere asked. "I would like to make a special report. Would you please connect me to Agent number 5? Layla asked. "The single agents are too busy. You can report it to me and I will pass on the message to them." "I'll ask you again," Layla said firmly. "Please let me speak to Agent 5. This is not a request as an agent, but say that it's from her daughter." There seemed to be a slight pause between the two for a moment, before the agent eventually replied. "I will see what she says." Layla waited while the other agent contacted her mother. In the Pure organization, they had special numbers associated with each agent. The number system could be split up into 4 different categories. The first group of people was the hundreds. These agents of Pure were given no such number ranking. All they were told were that they were above the 100 special agents. These people would often be new to the Pure organization and would only be used on large-scale operations. Then, below them were the ranked. These agents were numbered from 20 to 100. These were special operative agents whose numbers were based on their position within the organization. The lower your rank was, the more powerful you were. The third group was the higher ranked, going from 6 to 20. Because they were quite different compared to other agents because they were mainly there due to the power. And then finally, you had the final 5. Some of these members were the original creators of Pure and also the strongest within the organization. When Layla was first introduced to the ranking system, she found it weird. For a group that was so hell-bent on outcasting hierarchy in society, it was strange for their group to have one. But they always said that it was different because they all had the same goal in mind. It would only be this way for now until they achieved their goal, and then they would get rid of the ranking system. By then, equipment, wealth, and resources would be distributed equally. Layla started to remember the mock videos they showed her of what the world could be, and they always seemed so peaceful. She was interrupted by a familiar voice while she was deep in her thoughts. "This is Agent 5. I hear you have some important news for me, Agent 83, the voice said. After hearing those words come out of her mouth, Layla was a little upset. She hadn't spoken to her mother in a while, and the first thing she talked about was business. She didn't ask her how she was or how she was doing and didn't even say her name, but she had always been like this, and Layla was used to it by now. Layla started to explain the details of what happened, how she acted on her own without informing Pure to protect her friends, going against Jack, and what the situation currently was. Though she did miss out on a few details here and there, especially the parts where she had informed all her friends who she was. So far, she had only said she told Aaron, someone who she wanted to bring over to Pure, about her real position. "Has your position been compromised by anyone else in the school or personnel?" her mother asked. "No, I've only informed Aaron. Right now they think she escaped on her own. They are looking for her, and she has no ability, as well as nowhere to go. If you can, please help her." "Don't worry," she replied. "We will do our best. Anyone who has been affected by True Dream will be accepted. We shall treat her well. However, you have gone against our code. Although you were not caught, you took action without asking for permission, and you even went as far as to use our name. Your punishment will be decided when you come back to the base. For now, you shall be demoted from position 83 to position 100. Update me when you have the location Aaron will be sent to. We will have someone on standby waiting. Oh, and one last thing. Layla, I am waiting for you. Soar through the ranks. Don't be disheartened and try to get into the upper level so we can meet more frequently. May Pure be with you." "May Pure be with you." As the call ended, Layla kept her head down. A demotion was quite a big punishment. It had taken Layla a long time to rise through the ranks, and just like that, she was at the bottom, barely hanging on to the numbered positions. When she was at the base, she rarely got to see her mother much. Her mother always told her as long as she was loyal to Pure and the cause, eventually, she would rise to the ranks and have a seat next to her. So far, she had been as loyal as can be and followed everything in the book. But everything slightly changed when she met Quinn and the others. She started having fun and enjoyed her time at school. Sure, there were bad people in the world, but not everyone abused their powers. There were those like Aaron who didn't even understand the injustice and discrimination currently happening. Layla felt like they just needed to educate the world more. She started questioning if Pure's forceful ways were the right thing to do, which is why she was hesitant about reporting Quinn and the others. If there was a chance she could leave the organization without receiving a punishment, she might have even considered it. And now, thinking about it, she was about to send one of her best friends to such a place. A place she no longer wanted to be a part of. Episode 213. Cursed Weapons. The two boys were closely following Leo as he walked around the school. It seemed like he was taking them towards the portal room at first. However, when they were about to reach the room, their path slightly changed. Quinn and Vorden both wanted to ask him where he was planning to go, but they were too afraid to do so. All the while walking, Vorden would constantly look around. He still had his doubts and felt like perhaps they were being led right into the den of their enemies. In the middle of their little stroll through the familiar pathways, another female who they had seen a few times met them. "Sergeant Leo," Faye said. "Where are you heading to? Didn't you receive the message?" she asked. "Sorry, I was busy training, and it seems that no one bothered to inform me. Is it something urgent?" he replied. There has been an update about the situation of the two students who ran away from their punishment. It appears that somehow, Pure has already got their hands on both of them. As the two boys listened in on the conversation, they snappily turned their heads to look at each other. Relief visited their consciousness, since it must have meant that Logan had successfully sent the fake video over. The contents explained how members of Pure had already triumphantly retrieved Peter and Aaron. "I see," Leo replied. "So has the search party for them been called off?" "Not quite. We, including a few other soldiers, have been called back for a meeting. Perhaps it was to discuss the next course of action." As Faye finished her words, she spotted the two boys standing not too far away from Leo. At first, she thought that they were just two students who were taking a walk around the school, but she quickly realized that they also halted their steps when Leo did. The other thing that they noticed was they weren't just any students. They were the first-year students who she had been seeing more than she would have liked to. Wherever these two went, it seemed like trouble was simply lurking in their shadows. The moment Faye focused her attention on the two, Vorden realized the mistake that they had committed. Usually he was good at this type of thing, and would have carried on walking to not incur suspension. The problem was, he and Quinn had both gotten caught up on what Faye had to say. "I don't know if you're aware of this, Leo, but there seem to be two first-year students following closely behind you," Faye said, further narrowing her gaze that was on Vorden and Quinn. "I may be blind, but I do know when I'm being trailed," Leo replied. "They are here to help me move a few things from my storage room. I promise I will go to the meeting room as soon as I'm done." If it was anyone else, Faye would have complained, suggesting that as a sergeant, they were neglecting their duty. If the general asked them to be present, then they needed to be immediate. However, Leo had some leeway when it came to the other sergeants. This was because they were aware of the fact that they wanted him, and it wasn't the other way around. "I will let them know that you will be a little late then," Faye said as she gave a salute before she took her to leave. "I wonder when the two of them managed to get close to Leo." A lingering thought registered in her mind. She made it a point to look over their files once she had returned to her office. She felt that something was amiss regarding the setup. On the other hand, Leo stopped in his tracks, prompting the students to do the same. They had reached an area in the school that they had never been to before. It was located around the back of the teleport area, and to access it, a special code should be entered on a panel that served as the lock. Again, Vorden was amazed at how well Leo was able to navigate the entire place. He couldn't help but think it had to have something to do with his ability. His curiosity was getting the better of him as a strange urge to touch Leo arose in him, but the opportunity didn't arrive. When they entered the special building, they noticed that it was full of rooms that housed an eerie ambiance. They were all barricaded with metal doors that had numbers painted on their facade. "This area is dedicated to the soldiers' storage room. When we moved here, we were allowed to bring our personal belongings," Leo explained. They walked for a few seconds, eventually stopping right before the door that had the number 12 painted on it. There is a security device that made sure that the only one who had access to this room was him, unlike the other codes utilized on the previous doors. Placing his hand on top of the access panel, it soon allowed Leo inside. When the storage unit opened, both Quinn and Vorden were amazed at what was inside. Some weapons were displayed on all sides of the room. In the center, there was something that looked similar to a boxing ring. There was a wooden doll, similar to the size of an average adult human being, holding a wooden sword. The whole place looked like any other weapons hall. "Are all these yours?" Quinn asked. "No, they once belonged to me and my friends. I just inherited them," Leo said with a melancholic tone in his voice, as he continued to walk towards the back of the storage room. The two boys waited at the back while Leo went to search for something. While bidding for their time, they couldn't help but look at the weapons surrounding them. "Inspect." Looking at the items, Quinn was curious to see what level they were at, and to his surprise, the first random weapon he looked at in the room was at the advanced tier level. It was a short little dagger. Quinn continued his inspection of the weapons. He noticed that most of them were high class, and were classified as beast equipment. He couldn't even imagine how much the whole thing would cost. It turned out that Quinn wasn't the only one who noticed the equipment around them was mostly high gears, as Vorden did too. "Hey, if you're not going to use these things, You mind if I keep them? Just then, Leo came out from the back, holding a fairly large circular device. It was almost the same size as his upper body. He placed it in front of the two students, making a loud sound as it hit the floor. I'm afraid that all of these weapons are cursed, Leo said. Their users died with too much resentment and those emotions stayed in their weapons. Subsequently, Leo placed his hand on his very own weapon. You didn't have to make up some lie if you didn't want to give it to me, Vorden cheekily replied. Sometimes our very own eyesight blinds us, Leo explained. Having no sight has allowed me to see more things than I have ever seen before. If only you could see the things I could see, perhaps you would begin to understand a little. As soon as Leo spoke those words, Vorden was interested. The sight he was referring to probably had something to do with his ability, Vorden thought. Oh, Vorden replied. You are talking about your ability. Is there a way you can show me? I can copy and use other people's abilities. All I need to do is touch their hand. Quinn was a little afraid about how Leo would react. He could tell that Vorden was pushing it a little too far, but surprisingly, Leo laughed at this. If you wish to, then go ahead, Leo said as he held out his hand. At the same time, a strange smile appeared on his face. With that, the pressure Vorden felt before was back. Episode 214, A New World. When Vorden explained to Leo his abilities, Leo was running his lie detection ability to see if he was speaking the truth or not. It was for this reason that Leo wasn't as cautious. With experience, Leo knew it wasn't a good idea to have contact with someone's ability you didn't know. Certain abilities had conditions that needed to be set before using them. This was called a cost. Cost abilities were usually stronger than regular abilities, but there were only a few that the public could obtain. Two examples of cost abilities were Vorden's, where he needed to touch a user's bare skin before being able to use their power, and Jack's, who could only absorb their power through the user's mouth. Cost abilities were quite rare and were still being discovered today. Sometimes families passed down ancient scripts, which their ancestors knew nothing about, but practiced out of tradition, only to find out later that there was a cost involved in unlocking their ability. Many people assumed this happened to True Dream too. In a world without abilities, Jack would have never discovered his very own ability. Vorden looked at Leo's hand once again, and this time with slight hesitation. Just do it, Rayton complained. You have to be so careful about everything you do. With Rayton speaking his mind like the little devil on his shoulder, he eventually took the plunge and shook Leo's hand. Vorden could feel an insurgence of new energy inside his body. The cells in his body were finally changing. It was the strongest force he had ever felt enter his body before. Even when touching the hand of Berg, a member of the Big Four and a level 8 user, he had never felt this type of energy before. Finally, the two of them let go. Well, Leo asked, do you see what I see? Vorden activated the ability, and his whole vision went black. He could no longer see using his regular eyesight. Instead, the walls and floor appeared like wireframes that were constantly moving, as if the ground and the walls around were alive. When he looked at his hand, he could see the flow of yellow energy appearing off his own body. He turned his head and looked at Quinn, who was giving off a different color, a dark purple hue which burned brightly. Vorden now understood why Leo was able to tell that Quinn was different. It was the colors of energy. Finally, though, when he looked at Leo, the largest shock came to him. Leo's flame was yellow, just like Vorden's. However, there was a big difference between the two. The flow of energy burning was much more intense, and it seemed to be at least 4 times bigger than his own. But how? Vorden thought. It didn't make sense to Vorden. Using his ability, not only did he copy the ability, but also the number of mutant cells in their body. Even if Leo's ability was beyond that of level 8 of the military scale, Vorden should have still been able to copy it. But looking at his aura and looking at Leo's, there was a big difference, and he didn't know why. Then, Vorden started to notice something else. The sword around his waist was also burning a bright red color, and the energy coming off from it was nearly just as strong as Leo himself. While Vorden was looking at Leo, he pointed towards the weapons on the wall. As he turned his head, he noticed that all the weapons hung up were burning with a bright red color too. "Is this normal for beast weapons?" Vorden asked. "It seems like you really can see what I can see. A regular beast weapon does not shine. As I said before, these are different," Leo explained. "And what about you?" Vorden asked. "Why are you—" Just before Vorden could ask his question, Leo immediately suppressed the yellow aura around his body and brought it down to the same level as Vorden. Seeing this action, Vorden knew Leo was telling him not to ask about it, and it was clear he had done it on purpose for some other reason. Leo then tapped the large metallic circular object. "This here is a portable teleportation device. It's an old one, but it still works. As you know, these are a one-time use thing. It will allow you to go to a destination, but not come back," Leo explained. "The location of this device is set to a planet called Lintarnia. It's a green portal planet that I once came from, so it should be safe. There is one problem though," said Leo. "As you can see, it's very big and heavy. There is no way to move this without being suspicious or being seen by anyone else. This is as much as I can help you." Quinn then walked up to the device and tried lifting the thing. It was indeed heavy, and would most likely take the two of them to carry it back to Logan's room. "We could bring Erin over to the portal," Vorden suggested, although it would be risky taking her out of Logan's room with all the people around. As Vorden made his suggestion, an idea suddenly popped into Quinn's head. He touched the shadow just underneath the large metallic object. "Dimensional space." The shadow underneath the object grew, and when it encased the whole thing, it eventually dropped down, as if the object was sucked into a black hole. "That solves the problem," Quinn said. With the dimensional space, as long as the object wasn't of living matter, he was able to take it with him and take it out whenever he liked, so it was perfect for this type of situation. "I wish you two good luck," Leo said. "It's best if we don't communicate with each other often other than our classes." As the two boys ran off, Leo looked at the back of the two of them. "The future ahead will be dark for you two, but it seems you will be strong enough to overcome it." Back at Logan's room, Layla had arrived before the two boys did. It didn't seem like Logan's room was inspected. Also, Peter hadn't gone on an outrage, which was the first piece of good news all day. Instead, Peter was carefully reading the files on the new students to identify who he was meant to take over. He needed to get his birth date and background details perfect, in case he was asked or if he ever needed to fill out forms for the school. While waiting, eventually the two boys finally arrived. "Looks like we did it," Quinn said. The circular portal was set up in Logan's room, while Layla sent a message with details about which planet Erin would be in, for an agent of Pure to pick her up. Once Layla received the confirmation back, it was finally time for them to say their goodbyes. Logan tapped a few buttons on the side of the circular machine, and two claw-like objects opened up from the side. A few moments later, a green-colored round fuzz of energy was produced. The portal was activated. Before stepping into it, she looked back at everyone in the room. "I know you losers will still do well without me. Become the best and keep my top place warm for me when I return," she said with a smile. Looking at Erin's smile, their hearts started to melt a little. It was the first time they had ever seen Erin smile, and it was beautiful. She was already a beauty, but the smile was the icing on top of the cake. The one that seemed to be upset about the whole thing, though, was Layla. Tears wouldn't stop falling down her face, as she was truly losing a good friend. "Remember, if there is any problem and you need to contact us, use the watch," Logan shouted. With those last words said, Erin stepped into the portal, experiencing a whole new world. "Please don't let anything bad happen to her," Layla thought. Episode 215, Peaceful Playing. On the planet Biolotmare, a medium-sized shelter stood along a clear blue river. A Tier 4 shelter with a population of around 20,000 people. The shelter wasn't owned by the military or the Big Four, but instead was owned by a secret benefactor who would hire out travelers, or traveler factions, to guard the place. It was unusual for a shelter because usually they would publicly declare who they were protected by to avoid any confrontation with other groups, but not this one. The shelter was surrounded by hilltops and long green fields, and it seemed like the area was completely void of beasts. Standing by one of the portal entrances was a young man who was tapping his foot on the ground. As he was waiting, he watched the children and families happily play with each other on the street, while others were even swimming in the river. "So peaceful," the young man said. "They can live their lives out here all happy, but they're unaware of what is happening back on Earth and the other planets. Everyone should deserve something like this, not just you guys." A strange sound was heard by his side. When he turned his head, he could see the space next to him became distorted. Warping in and out suddenly, a bright white circular portal appeared. A snow-white skinned female with blonde hair dropped out of it. She braced herself gently as she landed on the floor, but for a few moments remained completely still. Little drops of water hit the floor, and finally when they stopped, she lifted her head and wiped her face with the sleeve of her arm. The man walked up to the woman and looked her up and down before saying anything. She was wearing the school uniform as described to him by Agent 100. "An angel flies high in the sky," the young man said. "And as its wings torn down and falls to the ground," Aaron replied. Before leaving, Layla had informed her if someone was to approach her, they would speak a certain phrase. This was a code, so agents could tell who was who between each other. "Looks like you're the right one. Follow me." She followed the young man for a while as they walked through the shelter. While looking around, she noticed how calm and peaceful the place looked. It was different from other shelters, but it also reminded her of the shelter her family protected when she was younger, before the Dalki attacked. "If I remember right, the others borrowed this from Sergeant Leo. Maybe this is where he used to live," she thought. The young man led her out of the shelter. Before stepping out, Erin turned and took one last look at the peaceful place. A thought crossed her mind that maybe she could run away and stay here. It might be a better option than going to Pure. But then, looking at the peaceful town, images appeared in her head of the houses on fire, the buildings destroyed. She suddenly remembered why she wanted to get stronger in the first place, for something like that to never happen in her presence, ever again. If Pure was helping her, for now she would comply. There was always the option of contacting Logan and the others in the future with the wristwatch. Looking at the boy, she noticed that he wore quite a decent level beast gear. On his back was a single long sword. The hilt was black as a scale, but was as wide as his shoulders. Just by looking, she could tell the thing would be heavy, and a regular human wouldn't be able to wield such a large sword. He also wore metal-plated armor that seemed to mix in beast parts here and there, such as blue fins near the shoulder pads and scaled parts over the shin part of his legs. Finally, they had reached the top of the hill. From the top, they were still able to see the river flowing through the valley and the shelter just from the other side. "This should be far enough," the young man said, standing near the edge of the cliff top. The man started to walk around as if he was looking for something on the floor, until eventually a ping sound was heard. "Here it is." The man started to dig down at the spot with his bare hands. Although he was tearing pieces of the ground away, he made it look like he was just shifting piles of sand away. "Hey, pretty lady, are you just going to stand there, or are you going to help me?" the man asked. Aaron looked at the floor where the man was digging, and then looked at his hands, which were covered with dirt. At least he was wearing a pair of gloves, but the only thing she managed to bring with her was her sword that always stayed around her waist. Unwillingly, she took a step forward. Although she didn't want to get dirt on her hands, she thought it would be best if she made a good impression with the people she would be staying with for a couple of years. Just as she moved forward, a loud screeching sound could be heard in the air. At first, it looked like a small little black dot in the sky, but it got bigger, and eventually, Aaron had a clear view of what it was. "Watch out!" she shouted. "It's a beast!" While seeing how peaceful the town was, she had forgotten about the fact that this still wasn't Earth. Dangerous beasts lived on these planets. The young man turned and slowly drew out his large sword, as if what was happening was somehow annoying to him. Suddenly, the beast stopped its descent and spread its wings wide open, hovering by the cliff top in front of the young man. The beast looked like a large butterfly, and was the same size as a regular human. Its wings had beautiful, rounded patterns. But as beautiful as its wings were, the same couldn't be said for its head. It had too many eyes to count and razor-sharp teeth, with what looked like foam coming out of its mouth. "Will you please just let me go home?" the young man shouted, and at the same time, the butterfly beast dashed forward. Aaron immediately went to cast an ice spike from below, hoping to hit the beast. But that's when she sadly realized that she no longer had her powers. It marched forward, and the young man lifted the sword just at the right time, pushed it down like a pin right on top of its head. Its wings had stopped in an instant, and the beast was dead. "Can you at least get the crystal?" the man asked. "It's located in the lower half of its body." While Aaron went to carve out the beast's crystal, the man continued to dig in the location. Just as she wiped the black blood of the beast away using the grass on the ground, she noticed it was slightly clear in color. "What is this?" she said in shock. The clearer the outer shell of the crystal surrounding the energy inside, it meant the higher the tier of crystal. Right now, what Aaron held in her hands was a crystal with its first outer shell clear, which meant it was at least an intermediate tier beast. And the young man was able to kill it using no abilities and only beast weapons. Aaron was starting to see the pure organization in a slightly different light right now. Finally, the man had stopped digging and pulled out a large, circular metallic device. Straight away, Aaron knew what it was because it was similar to the one she had used to arrive on this planet. After pressing a few buttons on the side, the portal opened up. "Well, are you ready to meet your new home?" he asked. Before, she wasn't so keen, but after seeing the young man's actions, she now stepped forward willingly. Before they entered the portal, though, the man stopped her. "Take off the watch," he said. "This? If you're worried about the school tracking me, they won't be able to. Your member disabled it," Aaron tried to explain. The man then forcefully grabbed her wrist and snapped the watch off before throwing it onto the ground. "You're about to head into the Purist base. We can't and won't take any chances." After that, he pulled Aaron into the portal, and the two of them disappeared out of sight. Episode 216. Unusual Friendship. At Military Base 2, things were starting to calm down. Not just for the soldiers on the base, but also for Quinn and his group. The video seemed to work quite well, and it looked like they had nearly called off the entire search. The base was now treating it as a secondary objective, rather than a full-on search. Because of this, each member felt like a huge weight was lifted off their shoulders. However, Layla felt like a new one was put on hers. There was only one problem left to solve right now, and that was Peter. The group had decided they would continue to hide Peter inside Logan's room. It wasn't the right time to reveal him. The tension was still a little high. While he stayed in Logan's room, it would also give him time to practice the details of the student he was pretending to be. Before leaving Logan's room, Quinn made a cut on his hand and fed some of his blood to Peter and commanded him not to attack Logan. He would need to do this every night until Peter was able to use the disguise. This meant right now it was night. The others had left, and the only ones in the room were both Logan and Peter. Despite their situation, Logan simply continued his normal routine in the night. He was at his workbench using strange tools as he messed around with his gadgets. This continued for a few hours. "Where did I put that cogwheel?" Logan asked himself as he surveyed around the room but couldn't find anything. As he swiveled around in his chair, he noticed that Peter was standing in the same spot and wasn't moving. "Do you not need to sleep?" Logan asked. Peter replied just by shaking his head. "Well, I don't sleep much either." He shrugged and then motioned to him. "Hey, do you mind passing me that cogwheel shape by your side?" Peter looked around for it and handed over the strange device that Logan had asked him for. Without saying anything else, Logan continued to work on his new invention. "Pass me the green glowing circular orb," he asked. "The one on your left, that spinning spiky thing," Logan asked once more. "And that upside-down looking you. Now that beast crystal to your right." He continued to ask for different tools, and Peter did as he asked. He handed them to him. "Finally finished," Logan said and turned to Peter. "You were a great help. You didn't ask me any questions and didn't keep me distracted from my work, Peter. Now it's my turn to help you." Logan opened up the files which displayed information about the student named Pio Blank on the screen. While the file was open, Logan would ask a series of questions, to which Peter would answer. They continued this until Peter could remember every detail about Pio blank by heart. The speed at which Peter memorized everything impressed Logan. It was like his memory was picture perfect. "Do you mind doing me another favor?" Logan asked with a small smile on his face. Peter hopped into the VR machine. Logan would communicate with him while he was connected. Right now, Logan wanted to see Peter's capabilities and strengths. Logan asked Peter to do a series of things, such as run as fast as he could, throw a punch as hard as he could, as well as dodge a bunch of incoming objects that were thrown at him inside the simulation. Eventually, with all the stats recorded, Logan had something else he wanted to try. "Peter, behind you a pair of weapons will appear. Use them however you wish against the NPC enemies." Suddenly, a pair of short blades appeared on the ground behind them, and at the same time, 8 different men, all in a solid black color, appeared. They didn't look like humans, but like blobs of ink instead. These were the NPCs that Logan had created to practice his fighting skills, and weren't part of the game he created. Using the 2 weapons and Peter's speed, he was able to deal with most of the enemies with ease, and Logan was impressed. Right now, both his strength and speed were nearly 4 times the level of an average human. Logan continued these sets of tests, and each time he would drop in a different weapon for Peter to use against the enemies. Right now, Logan had set the game to allow his body to react as it would do in real life, and what was more amazing than anything was the fact that Peter never seemed to get tired. He was able to fight just as well as he did from the start of the game to the end. Peter, while going through the entire process, was having fun. On the outside, he hadn't been able to test his strength. He was able to use it freely for the first time. Even if he was being used by Logan for his purposes, he didn't mind. The relationship between them was mostly give and take. Finally, the simulation had ended, and Peter exited the pod. After gathering all of Peter's stats, Logan concluded that Peter would make a great spy or assassin. He performed best with the short dual blades while using the weapons. He also never got tired and could run at great speeds. He also had a nearly perfect memory. And lastly, he also knew that they had the ability of transformation, being able to disguise himself as anyone he wanted. It was a shame that Peter was already on Quinn's team. If the case had been any different, then Logan would have loved to have invited him for his very own portal outing. While Logan was deep in thought, he heard a knock on the door, and to his utter surprise, it was Quinn and Fex. "What are you 2 doing back here so soon?" Logan asked. "What are you talking about?" Quinn replied. Logan quickly rushed to his computer to check the time. It was already the next day in the afternoon. Classes for the school day had already ended, and Fex, along with Quinn, had come to check up on Peter, as well as another reason. Without realizing it, Logan had been up the whole day with Peter. "What can I do for you?" Logan muttered as he rubbed his bloodshot red eyes. "You can sleep if you want," Quinn asked. "Yeah, you look nearly as dead as Peter," Fex added with a chuckle. "Well, I can decide that once you 2 let me know what you need. If you're here for Peter, I and him are doing great." "Actually," Quinn replied, "I was hoping we could use your VR capsule. I wanted you to add Fex's ability to the game for us." Now that everything had calmed down, Fex was finally able to keep well on his promise. He was planning to show Quinn how to fight the vampire way. Episode 217, Vampire Basics. The reason why the 2 boys decided to visit Logan right after their classes wasn't just to check up on Peter. A while ago, Fex had said that he would teach Quinn how to use the vampire style of martial arts that focused on using their hands and fists as weapons. At the time, Quinn didn't trust Fex too much, so he came up with the idea of allowing Logan to record Fex's ability and upload it to the game's private server. This way, Fex would not be able to control Quinn's body and make him attack his friends, but he could use the ability inside the game to teach Quinn how to fight. At this point, the 2 of them had gotten a little closer, and Quinn felt that even if they were to do this outside of the game, Fex would bring no harm to his friends. There were multiple opportunities when Fex could have done this, but he always chose not to, and had helped them out greatly. Of course, Quinn was still a little bit cautious, since he didn't even know Fex's reason for being at school. Another reason was that, if they were to practice in the game, it would be away from the prying eyes. After hearing what Quinn wanted to do, Logan's eyes filled with a strange energy. "I suppose I still have some energy left in me," Logan said as he quickly hopped onto his computer. "Go on then, Quinn, you've done this before. Show him what to do." Just like Quinn had done before, Fex was placed into the fairly large glass tube. He was then told to use his ability in different ways, while the tube and computer would record how his ability worked. Watching from the outside, Quinn felt like it was strange how the tube and computer were able to accurately replicate the abilities in the game. The other thing that impressed him was the fact that Logan wasn't typing anything into his computer at all. He just had his hand pressed up against it. While this was happening, thousands of lines of code were being written. Quinn had seen Logan's ability a few times now, and had seen it use it in quite versatile ways, so he had concluded what it might be: the ability to communicate with machines, or more precisely, give life to machines. When Quinn was last in his room, he used the inspection skill on a couple of items that Quinn thought he should have been able to use, but when he picked them up, there was no reaction, nothing at all, and it seemed like the machine was broken. But without saying anything, Logan would touch the machine. It would light up and work once again. If his ability was to give life to the gadgets that he created, it was the perfect ability for Logan. With anyone else, it would be pretty useless, apart from bypassing doors and such. But for Logan, it allowed him to use his ability in so many different ways, just like he was doing with the games, and with the little spiders, they saw being used multiple times. "And we are done," Logan said as he opened his eyes and let go of the computer. "How will we play?" Quinn asked. "There's only one VR machine." "I thought of that beforehand," Logan said as he threw two very small, square-looking nanosticks in the air. Both Quinn and Fex caught them with ease by swiping their hands in the air. Usually if you try putting anything into the VR capsules, it will just reject them for security reasons, but those have been blessed by me, Logan explained. "Just head to the back and pop them in. After that, when you log into the VR capsule, it will give you the option of which server to connect to. I put both the shadow and string ability into the private server for you to use. Now get out of here and go play your little game." Before leaving the room, Quinn gave a few drops of blood to Peter and repeated the same command as before. Although Logan felt like there was no reason for the two of them to get into a fight, still, he didn't know if Peter's violent nature was being suppressed by Quinn's blood or not. As soon as the two boys left the room, Logan almost collapsed on his bed. He didn't sleep much, but every so often he would be burnt out. Peter looked at Logan in the room before looking at the VR capsule again. "Do you mind if I use the VR capsule?" Peter asked. But Logan was already asleep. "Whatever, it's just a game," Peter said as he climbed into the machine. "Logging in online. Please create your user ID." Quinn and Fex were now in the game's white lobby room. They had done as Logan instructed. And just like he said when they went to log into the game, it gave them the option to connect to the normal servers, or the private server Logan had created. Right now, they were in his private server. Fex was currently testing out his string ability, and he was amazed at how lifelike it felt. There were a few things that he wasn't able to do with the strings that he could do on the outside, but that was mainly when he tried combining some of his vampire skills with his abilities. After testing out his strings for a while, he was finally ready. "Okay, so the idea is, I will control your body using the strings. Now what you need to do is focus on the feeling of each movement. Every sequence of moves starts somewhere and ends somewhere. You need to put these things together like building blocks. Rather than me showing it to you, this is the best way I can teach you, because your body experiences it along with your muscles," Fex explained. "So are you ready?" Quinn was ready this time. Within the game, there was no chance for him to be hurt. He stood with his back facing towards Fex, and had his arms and legs spread out to make it easier for him. Just like he did with Aaron, Fex walked up to Quinn and inserted 12 different pieces of string into 12 different parts of his body. Unlike the real world, though, there was no pain involved. Fex did a few simple tests first, moving his body around. It felt unnatural to Quinn, as he wanted to fight it, and he had the strength to resist it a little. Unlike Aaron, who was limited by her regular human strength, it was easy for Fex to force her to do what he wanted. "Calm down, will you?" Fex complained. "For this to work, you need to be in a sleep-like state. That way I can use your body how I like. You just need to pay attention with your mind. Quinn closed his eyes and tried relaxing his body. It took a while for him to allow his whole body to go limp, as he was afraid he would fall over if he did. But suddenly when he did, he felt a jolt in his legs. He didn't fall over, but instead, Fex had taken control of his legs. After getting past the weird feeling, the rest was now easy for Fex. He went ahead and did the same set of punches he did every day while he was training at school. Of course, there was a lot more to martial arts than just learning how to do the moves. It was important to know when to use them, what moves countered what, and so on. But at least it would allow Quinn to progress quicker. Quinn concentrated hard as Fex demonstrated the moves using his body. As his arms flew out from different angles, they were fast and stiff. At the same time, his body was always in a position where he could see an oncoming attack, while being able to block using his shoulder. After the set of punches was demonstrated to Quinn, Fex disconnected the strings and allowed him to practice them. Quinn was feeling fresh, so he didn't want to waste any time and started performing them. Quinn tried to combine the feelings of the punches together with his muscle memory from being controlled by Fex, and it seemed to be working out well for him. Fex watched Quinn carefully as each move was performed nearly perfectly to how they were shown. "Looks like we have a fast learner," Fex said. Although the string method was able to help someone progress faster, it couldn't help them completely. In the end, it was down to the person. With Erin, she too had tried performing the moves nearly instantly, but not once was she successful. But here, it seemed like something had connected Quinn. "Quinn, am I just making my enemy stronger, or am I making a powerful friend in the future?" Fex thought. As Quinn didn't want to let go of this feeling, he continued to practice the punches Fex had taught him. He was slowly perfecting them. Then all of a sudden, he heard a ding from the system. Episode 218, Zombie. Basic Vampire Martial Arts Unlocked Level 1. New tutorial videos available. The usual sound appeared, which indicated that Quinn was able to unlock something from the system. As he practiced the moves, he felt something strange happen. It was as if his body was still being guided by the strings, but it wasn't. The memory was so fresh in his head that his body was moving on its own, and after the last movement, the message had appeared. Basic Arts? Quinn read. Does this mean there are stronger vampire martial arts out there? Maybe Fex only taught me the basics on purpose, or maybe he only knows the basics. The second message was what interested Quinn more. The last time he had watched the tutorial videos, they helped him out greatly, teaching him the flash step and the hammer strike. The second tutorial video taught him how to combine moves. This time, the tutorial was unlocked when Quinn had learned the vampire martial arts, so perhaps there was a tutorial skill related to it. He quickly glanced over at Fex and chose not to watch the videos right now. Quinn was playing the complete beginner act when it came to vampire arts. If he was to demonstrate a skill that hadn't been taught, then it would only raise suspicion. "I think I got the basics down," Quinn said. "Is there anything else besides this?" Fex looked at Quinn again, still mesmerized by how quickly he had learned the fighting style. This was something he did day in and out as a child, and amongst others, and even then he was considered a genius. But if he was a genius, then what did that make Quinn, who had learned it in a few hours? Fex thought maybe Quinn already knew the arts and was lying for some reason. But thinking back to their first fight, it seemed impossible. He would have to be a first-class actor to fake punches that bad, and then do the same again while fighting against the teacher Leo. "Yes," Fex replied. "These are only the basics. I can perform at a level above what I showed you, obviously, but I honestly wouldn't be good enough to teach them to you. If you want to learn some more, you're better off getting a real teacher to show you." Part of what Fex had just said was a lie. It was true he most likely couldn't teach Quinn. He tried that once before, and his explanations weren't the best. Still, whatever Fex could do with his own body, he could do using someone like a puppet. Even slightly better. There was a small fear inside Fex that if he kept teaching Quinn, he had to teach him the advanced vampire martial arts. Looking at Quinn's learning capability, he might defeat Fex easily, and Fex didn't know how to react to that. While the two of them were busy practicing inside the private server, they were unaware of what was happening elsewhere in the game. Zombie P winner. So, is it another hacker? This game has been going downhill these days. Someone watching the match had said. But that's his 50th win in a row. Surely the admins would have found out about him by now. I think he has a really good regenerative ability, no? I mean, it's in his name. Well then how do you explain the extra strength or the crazy speed he has? Doesn't look like he's wearing any beast gear to me. A few people in the crowd were currently watching a particular student play the VR game. Each of them had lost the matches, but found the fights a little strange, so they opted to watch the next few games. But as they watched each game, the same strange thing continued to happen. New matches been found. A new game had started, and once again, the student they had their eye on was going up against a level 3 telekinesis user. The telekinesis user had several black balls attached around his chest, while his opponent had no weapons at all. Standing on the opposite side was Peter. He didn't look like his usual self, as he was slightly disguised by the avatar. Although he selected a pretty basic default design that had a randomly generated face with a few scraps of clothing. The fight had begun. Peter rushed forward. At the same time, the telekinesis user threw out the metallic balls using his ability to speed them up. Peter, however, was fast and was able to dodge most of the incoming attacks, and the few that he couldn't, he knocked away with his hand. However, the opponent was strong, and there were too many metallic balls floating in the air for Peter to dodge. When it came to fighting, Peter wasn't exactly the most skillful person. Eventually, one of the metallic balls came at great speed and managed to hit Peter in the center of his shin, smashing and breaking it in half, causing him to fall to the ground. The others could feel the pain just from watching Peter. Although the game only replicated a small amount of pain back to the user, they could imagine it must have hurt a lot. The telekinesis user calmly walked over to Peter, thinking it was all over. He had taken out one of his opponent's legs, and no movement would mean the end. However, the others watching from the stand knew it wasn't the end for Peter. They had all thought the same thing while fighting against Peter. Suddenly, after a few moments, Peter was able to stand up again, as if the attack had never hit his leg in the first place. He immediately ran towards his opponent. He was caught off guard, and in a panic, tried to fire all the metallic balls right at Peter. But his speed was impressive. Peter dodged the balls, and even though they were now chasing him, he was faster than the balls. Eventually, when he was close enough, Peter pounced on top of his opponent and widely swung his fists towards his head. There was no class and no style with Peter's attacks. It was like one of a wild animal. Winner Zombie P. Each of the opponents Peter had gone against had witnessed his impressive regenerative abilities. It was that of a high-level ability user. Still, some people were suspicious, since Peter also seemed to have impressive strength and speed on top of his healing powers. As the game had ended just outside the VR pod, Logan was finally waking up from his nap. As he slowly opened his eyes and looked around the room, he noticed that Peter wasn't there. Upon closer inspection of the room, he noticed that the VR pod indicator light was on, showing that someone was currently using the game. "Peter!" Logan said as he rushed over to the computer and immediately logged in. It was as he thought. Peter had not logged into the private server to play, but instead had logged into the military servers. Quickly, Logan brought up a log of Peter's past games, hoping he hadn't done anything to stand out. After watching the highlights of Peter's last game, a slight smile appeared on his face. He too was currently witnessing the amazing regenerative abilities that he possessed. While joining the games, Peter hadn't selected any abilities, which meant the VR pod was able to record how Peter's body would react to such things in real life. Just like with Quinn. Because his body was able to perform the vampire abilities, the game allowed him to do it, rather than it being a part of his ability. Right now, the same thing had happened to Peter. "These vampires are more interesting than I thought," Logan said. Still, there was now another problem on Logan's hands. He had already received a few emails from admins, asking to look into the user ID of Zombie P, making sure it wasn't a hacked player, since there had been a few complaints made online. "I guess your fame online will be a short one, Peter. The world cannot learn of you just yet." With that, Logan forcefully disconnected Peter from the online world. However, it was a little too late, as some of Peter's amazing regenerative power videos had already been spread online. Meanwhile, in another military base, a certain group of boys had also managed to watch the videos that had been posted. "Did you see?" Sam asked. "Yeah. Looks like there will be a lot of interesting people at the intermilitary base event," Nate replied with a big smile. Episode 219, Hitting the Limit. Inside the training hall in one of the military bases, Nate and Sam were training. The second-year students had a lot more time compared to the other students. Hence, most of the time, second-year students would use their free time for practical training. They often went to other planets to support the base military in their endeavors. However, as of the moment, the second-year students were to remain at their bases for the time being, under the upcoming inter-base military event. It was an event that required all of the 8 military bases to enter. It was a competition among the bases. The events varied from certain activities and games to straight-out fighting. The military bases would compete to see who would raise the best and strongest students. Moreover, the leaders and generals would often be rewarded greatly according to the acquired results. The event was important for the military bases and their leaders, since they would often get more funding and privileges based on the performance shown during their participation. Because of this, the second-year students, who were the main focus of the events, were practicing. This was for the reason that the second-year students often had more time to cultivate their abilities to higher levels. They were able to obtain more beast gear equipment and were more experienced overall. It was very rare for first-years to compete in some of the minor events, as most of the slots for each activity would usually be taken up by a second-year student. Still, there were some cases when a first-year user might be suited for a particular activity. An example of this would be the Hack the Vault Challenge. In this tournament, the team would have to make their way through numerous security devices and Sentinel, successfully making their way to the vault right at the end of the course. This didn't solely require strength, but rather a set of particular skills. The two of them were in the room. Sam was reading a level 6 ability book that was placed on the floor. Meanwhile, Nate observed his companion. Sam had his eyes closed for a while now, meditating. All the while, energy was flowing inside his body. He was trying the techniques that were written down in the book. The power began to rise from the pit of his stomach, but soon after, it became painful. All of a sudden, a burning sensation arose in his chest, promptly stopping him from what he was doing. "Don't push yourself, Sam. This might be your limit," Nate said. Sam looked at his friend's wristwatch, which was now displaying the number 7. Nate had grown so much stronger, and Sam was always behind him, so he wanted to catch up. Sam had done well in increasing his ability from level 4 to 5. He had saved up enough money to buy a level 6 wind ability book. Nevertheless, the problem that he had right now tortured many. Hence, he had reached his limit not long after. Just because one had a high-level ability book, it didn't entail their eligibility to earn it. Usually, humans have varying anatomy, mainly on the aspect that every one of their bodies produces different amounts of MC cells. The burning ache that Sam felt in his heart meant that he had reached his limit. Thus, pushing his body any further could be dangerous. Sam knew what this sensation meant, as it conveyed the state of his body. However, he still wanted to pursue the matter, even supposing that after several attempts, it seemed like his efforts were useless. He had abused the extensive strain that his body could bear, though it wasn't a complete loss, since he could still sell the book to others who would need it. However, optimistic Sam was regarding the issue. Nate could see that his friend was depressed. "Don't worry too much. There are plenty of people out there who are strong even without the use of abilities. Look at that Pure group, for example," Nate said with a cheery tone in his voice, trying to ease Sam's worries. "All we need to do is get you some good beast gear that suits your ability. Also, we can always work on your skills." Sam could tell that Nate was trying to cheer him up, so he didn't want to stay too depressed in front of him for too long. If there was one thing that could make him feel better, it was bringing his friend back down to his level. "So, about that new teacher, it seems like she's been picking on you during classes lately," Sam said, giggling away like a high school girl. Nate's face had gone bright red at this point, as he started to remember the small banter that he and Silver had. That teacher is bonkers. She already made fun of my head, but she refuses to call me by my name and calls me blockhead all the time. I even decided to shave the corners of my beautiful hair because of her. I also heard about how one of the other teachers confessed to her. The next day, he came into school with a black eye, Sam replied as he looked at his friend's new haircut. I always wondered why you purposely matched up to your hair with your face's jawline. I think this rounded look is a lot better for you, Sam replied. You mean it? Nate said as he enthusiastically grabbed Sam's hands. I haven't seen her today, so maybe she will like this new haircut of mine as well. You poor soul, Sam said while shaking his head. You don't even realize you're already in too deep. I wonder where she is, Nate said, looking around the room. Meanwhile, inside the school's IT room, Silver was currently standing above one of the school's staff members. The reflection from the screen displayed that his eyes had a slight red tint to them, meaning that he was under Silver's control. Right now, she was searching for the school files regarding a student named Fax. So far, there were no results. It was expected, especially since if she was in Fax's shoes, she would have never used her real name in the human world. Still, she would try it even if there was a slim chance. After searching the military base's school files, she asked the man to check the other military bases one by one, and to her surprise, she did get a hint about his existence. Oh, you stupid little boy, Silver said out loud. The file was found, and it seemed like Fex had used his real name. The reason why she wasn't able to find him so far was because he was located at Military Base 2. Although this was good news for her, it wasn't long until the interbase military event, and she would be able to make her move to bring Fex home. Hopefully you haven't caused too much trouble yet. Episode 220, Confronting Layla. It appeared like everyone was busy, dead set on doing their own thing. Because of this, Borden found the situation a little boring. Before, he would often spend his spare time teaching Peter on how to use the Earth ability. If it wasn't something like that, then Borden would be racking up his head, trying to figure out how to get out of a tough situation. It was as if he liked to keep his mind busy. If he was left on his own accord, there were only two people who he could talk to, although they seemed to be a bad influence on him. As of the moment, the uninteresting occurrences were transpiring. Hey, do you think we can trust her? Rayton shouted as he asked. We knew something was up, and it looks like we were right, working for Pure. Who knows what she's already told them? They could be after Quinn, Sil said while continuing to rock back and forth. Guys, will you all just calm down? Borden hollered, annoyed by his companion's complaints. Sil, I know you're worried, but if Layla has done something, I think Pure would have done something by now. Yet no harm has come to him. With these words, Sil gradually slowed down the motion he had been doing. This was a sign that Sil was starting to calm down a little. Now, Borden needed to deal with another person. The more riled up Rayton got, it would affect Sil to a similar level. Borden's aim was always to keep Sil as calm as possible at any point in time. Sil can remove anyone from the chair if he wished to. Borden always feared this, although he wanted the best for Sil. If Sil ever did remain on the chair, what did that mean for both him and Rayton? What about the next portal outing? Rayton queried. What if she plans to make her next move then? We need to find her real goal. Actually, scratch that. No risks, just off with her we go. Fine, Borden replied, giving in to the idea. He knew firsthand that if he didn't do something, Rayton would continue down this path, and eventually, he would get Sil worried. Then I will go talk to Layla. A few moments passed. Borden could be seen walking around the school aimlessly, searching for all the popular spots where the other students usually hang out at. Regrettably for him, he did not find any trace of Layla in the area. Who does Layla even hang around with? Borden contemplated on the matter. As he reminisced, he thought of the two students who were the only people that he had seen Layla talk to. They were Quinn and Aaron. Presently, with Aaron gone and Quinn consistently spending his time in the VR pod, it meant that Layla would most likely be in her room. Thus, Borden went to the dorms to visit Layla. After a few minutes, he landed at his destination. Upon knocking on the door, a female student answered it. That was the first time Borden had ever seen her. The most prominent feature of the lady was her short black hair, with a fringe that cascaded her face, nearly covering the entirety of her right eye. Her name was Sia, and she was the third person who occupied Aaron and Layla's room. "What do you want, Blondie?" Sia said with an irked tone in her voice, seemingly bothered by Vorden's appearance. "Is Layla there?" Vorden asked. "Are you her boyfriend?" Sia said as she scanned Vorden's body from head to toe. "I'm guessing you two had an argument or something, judging how she's been since yesterday. Or maybe it was the fact that she found out her best friends were terrorists, but she's not here." This was the explanation the school had given, that 8 students had been found with connections to the group known as Pure, and were taken to the dungeon as a form of punishment. "She's not a terrorist," Vorden mumbled. He didn't know why, yet hearing Aaron's name trashed like that by a stranger, who didn't know the truth of the whole situation, really annoyed him. "Whatever, man. Look, if you want to find Layla, she's usually by the back of the building, sitting on a bench just underneath the large tree. She and Aaron often went there together." With that piece of information, Vorden left without saying another word. He was mostly polite, however, something about Sia just rubbed him the wrong way. "Oh, pretty boy," Sia shouted. "If you and Layla are an item, then feel free to pop a visit in my room anytime," she said, winking at him as she closed the door. "Now that's my type," Rayton said. "Shut up," Vorden replied, as he went off to the location that Sia had informed him about. The sun had set, and the darkness encompassed the sky. Although it still wasn't very late, usually the sun would set after 7 in the evening. While walking to the location, Vorden felt that it would be strange to be seen anywhere in the area. It might be fine in the middle of the day, but at night was bizarre. As he turned the corner, he indeed saw someone sitting alone on a bench right underneath a tree. Vorden moved in closer. Eventually he reached the spot in front of her. It wasn't until the last moment that Layla lifted her head. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her face was a little swollen. There were signs indicating that she had been crying for most of the night. "Vorden, what do you want?" Layla asked in a rude tone. She had just lost her best friend, and the last person she wanted to see was standing right before her eyes. "I think we need to talk about whether or not I can trust you," Vorden asked. "This again?" Layla moaned. "Here, why should I care if you even trust me or not? Let's put it straight, Vorden. I and you are not friends, and we probably never will be, especially since you keep acting like this all the time." "Look, Layla, I need to know. I thought it was fine, but now that I know you're a part of Pure—" "So what?" Layla interrupted Vorden. "I was in Pure this whole time before everything started. The only difference now is that you guys know about it. That hasn't changed who I am, and let me ask you, aren't you going around accusing me all the time? But what about you? Why do you care so much about Quinn?" At this point, Layla had stood up from the bench and was starting to inch closer to Vorden. Accordingly, he continued to step back every time she took a step forward. It wasn't because he was scared of her, but because of the voices in his head. "If she takes one more step closer to us, Vorden, and you don't do anything about it, I swear," Rayton said, his tone a tad threatening. "Shut up," Vorden shouted as he grabbed his head. "Layla, I need to trust you. If I can't trust you, then I'm afraid of what will happen to you." When Vorden spoke of these words, he wasn't saying them in his usual tone of voice. Layla picked up on this, since he had said it with such sincerity, and that frightened her a little. She knew something was up with Vorden, but wasn't sure what. Perhaps it was a drawback of his powerful ability, she thought. But what was happening to Vorden? And why was he so attached to Quinn? "Then tell me, Vorden, what can I do to prove I'm on your side?" she asked. Fortunately, Vorden had prepared an answer to this question. Hence, as he walked over to her, it was the only thing he could think of. "Let Quinn turn you into a vampire. That way, I know that you're on his side."